Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, Austin Men's Development. This is a live stream where we're talking about the king archetype. So in Jungian psychology, we have these different archetypes that come into play, but we're talking about that and rejection. How, as men, do we handle rejection in a way that carries nobility, that's right for our people, that's right for ourselves, that is something that is going to serve the good and not move into this toxicity, this confusion, this anger, this revenge, this tyrannical sort of expression that we can have when we get rejected. That's what we're talking about now. We just finished up our rebuild call on Friday. It is the 24th of July. Let's get started. So a couple things here we hear in men's development are these archetypes that we've always kind of heard about, talked about, whether there's the warrior, the magician, the sage, the priest, the king, and so on. And everybody latches onto them, right? We all latch onto them. And this is where a lot of people get misinterpreted, or they misinterpret the meaning of these archetypes, is that all these archetypes are within you, but you don't just get to have them. You don't just get to say you're king. You don't just get to say you're a warrior. You must learn to walk that path, and it's an important part of masculinity, or if you're a woman, it's an important part of your femininity to find the different meanings and the truths of these archetypes within you. And really, they should be seen as points of reference. We see this all the time in different men's development of where people go like, no, man, I'm the king, or I'm the warrior, and so this is what I do. This isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about to find the points in your life where the warrior gets activated and to find the shadow side, to find the noble or righteous side, and all the different things in between to be able to navigate this sort of thing. If you look at the book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, it explains all this. Or Carl Jung stuff can be really difficult to read, so that might be tough. But what happens when we get rejected? And I want to kind of dive into some of these different archetypes with specifics that happen in masculinity. And I want to talk about this specifically because so many men come to us with divorce, with pain, with having their lives crushed, with getting laid off. I mean, we're in the middle of COVID, and there's just all sorts of bad stuff happening that all of us are feeling, and a lot of different pressures. And what's important is we need to understand that there is a deeper meaning to this. And this is the point of the archetypes, is they give us truths, they give us points of reference and directions of where to go that we can have faith in, that we can act upon and be better men. And I also want people to understand this, is that oftentimes what we see in men's development is a political leaning or a certain movement or cause that surround this type of thought with archetypes, that if we don't act now as Western men, we're going to let the country and society go to shit, and we need to do these different things. You also really need to realize that where these things come from with Carl Jung, or even my belief and interpretation of what Jordan Peterson's saying, which everybody loves to quote him to broadcast their agendas of just chaos, or Nietzsche was saying in these examples, was it was for you to find your own personal autonomous path, meaning your path and your individuality in the world. And that you need to also realize that greatness and masculinity and humanity and in femininity comes from any culture, in any background, meaning a man living in the West can have right-leaning ideas, left-leaning ideas. He can be Christian, he can be Muslim, and whatever it is. I'm sure I left millions of things out of options, of expressions of how we live our life and still find greatness. But what is important is his personal journey. So let's get into this. Our rebuild call today started at the beginning, before the call actually, with a call from my friend Chris, an amazing guy. He's a tremendous human being. We've been friends for probably like 12 years at this point. And we've gone on this path in so many different ways. And I was telling him, I was like, man, there's this time in my life where I feel there's a change that I need to do, a purging that I need to do, a facing of the fears of where I'm at personally and so on, that have to do with God, man, like transitions in my life. And he was like, man, this is BS. You know, what you're talking about is rejection. And there's all this king energy. You know, when Chris and I talk, it's very different because we know where we're speaking from. We're not talking about, you know, what, I don't know, some confused male who's way bought into some of the extremist movements of the manosphere, talking about king stuff. He's like, there's a great king energy to going for what you want and living for what you want and dedicating your life to it and still getting rejected, still getting the no. still getting the pain. And this is where we need to take the no of NO into no KNO, meaning knowledge. Knowledge comes from the rejection. Knowledge comes from the pain. But everybody else has this toxic archetype of the king that is starved, the king that is impotent, the king that is powerless, the king that doesn't have what he wants. So he turns into a tyrant, he turns into control, he turns into power. He becomes obsessed with this. He enacts certain actions just to prove who he is. And this all comes from the inability to take rejection. And the great king energy that we need to learn how to walk, we don't just need to relearn how to frame it in our head, but accept the pain, accept the rejection, accept what that means as somebody, and in the king archetype who oversees things, sees the big picture, needs to care for his family, his people, what goes into it all, needs to be able to take that rejection and know, and not move it into what so many people are justifying with so many aspects of their lives of being able to throw a tantrum. I put out in the world, I asked for something, I took the right actions to do it. We see this all the time with women, with jobs, and we see this so much with men, especially in the West, of going, I didn't get that, so I'm going to throw a tantrum. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to bitch about it online. I'm going to complain. And there needs to be a time and a place for that. There needs to be an expression of that. That needs to be allowed. But it also needs to be seen that it's something that is guided through. It's a part of your rite of passage as man. It's a part of you understanding that process of pain. It's a part of you grieving those different pains of rejection or doors being slammed in front of your face or trying as hard as you can but not being able to make it work. Your ambition being cut in half or sacrificed by the world without regard to you. This is a part of your journey. And he also said, it can't be a part of this young, boyish energy of putting what you want out in the world, asking for it, doing whatever you can to manifest it, and then it not working out, so you then give up on it. You give up on your career, your dreams, your views on sex and women and interaction. You give up on all these different things just because you got rejected, right? And it also can't be a part of that boyish, young, impotent, starved, powerless, coming from scarcity energy of the king, realizing that he needs to rely on control or power or knowledge to never be hurt again, that he's going to protect himself in these ways. And this is so important because we don't know how to accept no as men. We don't understand as men to move into these archetypes that aren't greatness by society standards, but define pillars of where we're supposed to get to in our lives so that we can be autonomous, so that we can be independent, so that we can be in modes where we're left in life, like we were just talking about on the call, where you go through a divorce or you go through an intense amount of pain in your life and you lose your relationship with your kids. You lose your relationship with your ex or your wife or whatever you want to call it. You lose your social status, which you may never even asked for, may never have even asked for, but you are no longer that person. And you are only left with who you are. But what happens when you're left with who you are and you bring in the damage of pouting, of throwing a tantrum, you bring in the damage of enforcing control or power over people to make some sort of sense out of what you're doing. You start in this mode where you empower tyranny, where you empower points of torture or control. And you think that this is right because it feels good. There's definitely a path. There's definitely a path for anger to take hold that you feel that's very real. There's definitely a path for revenge and power that you can enact and put out there in the world when you get that rejection. But in order to turn that no into knowledge, in order to turn that rejection into something that has nobility, that has power, that has something with love and compassion and the highest values of, I guarantee you, the things that you've always wanted in your life, that are now distorted by whatever, your own pain, but also turn into causes, turn into politics. Man, that's actually the opposite of what Jung was talking about and what Nietzsche was talking about. They were talking about independence. I get it that culture may be screwed. I get it that all these things might, have added to your story, but it's to your story so that you can be yourself. Man, instead of caving into those parts of what happened to you, and being the immature or the toxic or impotent or tyrannical king. We want to turn into that righteous person. Sadly, part of that path, or maybe not sadly, is a great, great attribute. Part of that path is tasting what it means to be that tyrant, knowing what it means to have that impotence, because we're not going to, and one of the reasons why I'm making these podcasts is not to convince you in any way, but to invite you to discuss, to talk, to purge, to express, to be a man, and to be able to be hurt, and to be in pain, and to want revenge, and to load the gun, or, polish off the sword, or to be angry, to be confused, to allow those things to happen, but all for the higher purpose, so we can be independent with ourselves, so we can be great men and enact the virtues by going through our hate, by going through our pain, by being somebody that can be scared out of our minds because we have now lost the thing that we invested in most, or we're losing it, or we're letting go from it. See, what's so interesting is in all of man's history, another thing which is overlooked so much in masculinity and a lot of the men's movements, but again, coming from Jung himself, is that in the studies of culture, no rite of passage, which is what so many men are in right now because we're confused, we're angry, we're losing in so many different ways. And culture may have brought that to you, but it's your job to change it. It's your beautiful individual path to change it. None of those rites of passage were done alone. There were always elders. There were always people to guide you. There was always a community. And this is something that is so important. So I share this message not to convince you to take the high road, or not to convince you to reframe your mind, but to convince you to join a discussion of where you can be yourself, where you can be afraid, where you can be angry, where you can be upset, where you can be full of hate, where you can do the things or think about the things or entertain the things or express and be that man that's doing all the things that society will not accept of you, that will put you in jail, that will hurt you. Not to do those, but to integrate them into you and to find the peace, because behind that is the only road to the virtues of nobility, of your morals, of your true beliefs that you can have. And that's the experience of Austin Men's Development. If you want to join that, come on our rebuild calls, man. We just had an epic one. It was 2.5 hours. It was amazing. We do those on Friday. We do those on Monday. We do it on Wednesday. And if you want to step it up to MDX and put in the real work of men's development, and to do the program, the work, check out the links down below. Sign up for the Rebuild Challenge in July. It's still $10 to do it for 14 days, $20 for the month. And man, it's a steal. I'm going to raise it in August, but hey, man, 6 hours a week, live coaching, a lot of work, a lot of material, a lot of interaction, a lot of deep dives into yourself. It's a beautiful thing. In any case, guys, you guys have a great weekend. Happy Friday. And just know that your story of men's development is not linked to an ideology. It is linked to you. But that requirement is for you to take it, for you to live it, and for you to own it. And that's what we're doing here. Never forget that. All right. Talk to you soon.